completely open their archives and facilities to international inspection on Assad's chemical and biological weapons programs, and make full disclosure of everything the Assad regime did with Iran during the Assad period in power, including the building of the nuclear reactor Deir el-Zor, a reactor being built by North Koreans, financed by Iran, obviously part of the Iranian nuclear weapons program. That, to me, real concrete action, as opposed to just talk, is what you need to lift the sanctions.
My final question now, what is the biggest threat for India going forward, considering China and Turkey's support for Pakistan?
Well, look, Pakistan is the immediate, imminent threat given the actions of the past few weeks. I think it's really, though, China that's the bigger threat. And I think one course of study in the near term here is the difference between Pakistan's reaction in 2019 and 2025, the growth of Chinese influence. In other words, this is not simply the material contribution China has made to Pakistan's military, but is this an indication of much greater political influence as well? Because I think that would indicate a very serious problem. It would take the Pakistan issue to a much higher, more dangerous level if the Chinese influence is really responsible.
All right. Thank you very much, Ambassador Bolton, for joining us for that very important all-comprehensive interview on the India-Pakistan conflict and a preview into Donald Trump's foreign policy as well. Time for a short break, but coming up on the other side, it's the third and final day of Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal's visit to the United States as both nations aim to finalize a trade deal. A special discussion with Jayant Dasgupta, former Indian ambassador to the WTO, when we're back. Welcome back. You're watching News Center. It's the third and final day of Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal's visit to the U.S. as both nations aim to finalize a trade deal. Goyal has held meetings with Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick and U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer. Both nations are hoping for an early harvest deal, and India is aiming for a total exemption from the additional 26% tariff. Abhimanyu Sharma is here with the details. Abhimanyu, what are you picking up?
Well, the Commerce and Industry Minister has already met the U.S. Commerce Secretary and the U.S. Trade Representative. He's likely to meet other top officials in the United States again. Now, apart from the first tranche of a bilateral trade agreement, which both the nations are looking to sign by the fall of this year, that is by October 2025, they are also looking to sign an interim deal before the 9th of July, when the reciprocal tariffs and the pause on that is going to end. So, India, of course, is looking to seal an interim deal, an interim agreement before the 9th of July with the U.S. to avert any applicability of reciprocal tariffs from the American side. Also, speaking of several exports and imports as far as the demands are concerned, the U.S. is seeking to export several agricultural products. However, India is likely to keep a minimum import price and also import quotas to protect its interests in sensitive sectors like agriculture and dairy. Apart from that, India is reluctant to allow any import of GM crops, of genetically modified crops from the United States, particularly alfalfa hay. However, India is open to allowing non-GM crops, but that, of course, would require a significant and explicit approval from the American side in form of a certification that a certain crop is not genetically modified. So that, of course, would entail due certification from both the sides. And as far as the interim deal, the interim deal is concerned, before the first tranche itself, not just goods, but even digital services and non-tariff barriers are likely to be a part of the entire mix. So clearly, India is looking to avert the impact of reciprocal tariffs, and government officials had also pointed out that given the recent trade data which was released a few days back, it can be witnessed that India has already started benefiting from the applicability of differential tariffs across countries. So the government remains positive about sealing an interim deal with the United States before the 9th of July.
All right, so optimism in the air as far as the Indo-US trade deal goes. Thanks, Abhimanyu, for joining us. To take this forward, I'm now joined by Jayant Dasgupta, former Indian ambassador to the WTO. Ambassador Dasgupta, there seems to be some amount of optimism that we will have an early trade deal. But do you feel the US will grant India a full exemption? Because this is the word that we're waiting for from the United States.
I think the US will come down from its perch of 26%. But whether it will restore the pre-Trump tariffs, that I'm not very sure about. So what I expect is that for the 90-day period, only 10% tariffs are in place. So maybe these tariffs will get reduced, but they will not come down to the pre-Trump tariff regime. So that is one thing. The other aspect is that India has now, I think, changed its stance and has said that it would like to have a three-stage deal with the US. The first one would be, of course, the interim deal before the 8th of July. The second one by about October 2025, when 19 other sectors will come in. And the third one, very importantly, will need US congressional approval. And that is something which President Trump will need if he is to reduce his tariffs from the pre-Trump levels, because that needs congressional approval.
Right. Ambassador Dasgupta, what we'd like to ask you is that India, for the moment, we hear, wants 0 tariffs. The Trump administration is keen to keep tariffs at 10% on Indian goods. If that were the scenario, would the interim deal be beneficial for us?
There are several factors which will have a bearing on this. The first one is what will be the tariffs on China and Vietnam and other competitors who also export more or less the same products that India does. Pharmaceuticals, textiles and clothing, leather, other low technology products which India specializes in, gems and jewelry, for instance, engineering goods. Now, if those tariffs are not going to come down for China, Vietnam, and the others, then even 10% will be an advantageous thing for India. But should they also come down to 10%? Yes.
Yeah, Ambassador Dasgupta, one more quick question that I wanted to ask you before we let you go. This is about agriculture. We believe that US is not just satisfied with reduction on tariffs on goods and services. They want entry for agriculture and dairy as well. India has already said no when it comes to genetically modified crops. But do you think we will be able to give US the kind of concessions they want on agriculture and dairy? This is a big demand. They want an all-encompassing trade deal.
On dairy, I think we will not allow the common products of dairy to come in. It will be the sophisticated kinds of cheese and other things which do not have a very large market in India. And also the certification, the sanitary certification that the milk which has been produced by the cattle, they have not been fed on animal, entrails, etc. So that is one thing. On the issue of GM, I think non-GM also, if they certify, we can allow. But for corn, soya, and a few other things, the tariff barriers will still be in place, or we may give a TRQ, which is a tariff rate quota, a lower tariff, substantially lower tariff for a limited quantity of products to be exported from the US.
Okay, thank you so much, Ambassador Dasgupta, for joining us on the program, putting the Indo-US trade negotiations in perspective. And we believe that there are one-on-one meetings and one-on-one dinner meetings also taking place between Piyush Goyal and his counterparts in the United States. With that, it's a wrap on this edition of News Center. More news and updates continue right here.